One. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, Uncle Sam, or the United States as we know now, is quite different from who the US was 30 or 50 years ago. The United States is tired, limp, and broke, and a lot of what's happening there has already gotten to them, like the likes of high interest rates, inflation, border issues, and internal implosion, which we see happening in California, Los Angeles, and in many parts of that continent. We think this is not an actor motion, something that side government fails to be able to understand, and we think this debate is uniquely about taking a retrospective perspective of what the USAID cut has done. And mind you, this was only around a couple of months ago, right? Donald Trump hasn't even been in office for a fucking year, and this whole USAID cut essentially happened within a short amount of time. We need to be able to be charitable to what the motion calls for and discuss that. I have a few key observations before I proceed on to my extension. The first thing is that opening government talks a lot about China and other alternatives, of which to an extent CG kinda doubles down on when they say, hey, predatorial debt, etc. We think that the fact that we have alternatives now, it's not just China, it's also other nation states, in and of itself is a good thing because we literally have fucking alternatives to choose from. Meaning, if you're so desperate that China's the only option, cool, they'd give it to you, the US wouldn't. The US can't anymore. But more than just that, because opening to an extent talked about that, we think that it bolsters some sort of protectionism and the ability of these individual states to become fiscally responsible and not be over-reliant on any external stakeholder. Because all people in this debate make some assumption. Our opening makes an assumption about the IMF and the UN. Have they done shit? I don't know, man. Maybe not. I wouldn't want to be reliant on them too. Opening government and to an extent CG commit on China. We think none of that particularly matter. It's not a tipping point in the round. We're just simply saying on CO a very logical observation that we have more alternatives, and gang, that cognizance of alternatives became present when the USAID got fucked because absent that, those particular things would be reliant from the US. Now we're able to look at other people. I'll take you in a bit. Bro, I said chat. Next, we think that our opening talks about soft power and resource wars, UN and other institutions. I'm going to particularly mechanize why uniquely it's through the USAID discontinuation and how it's asked for the United States, something that no one really talked about, and absent that, why it's better for the world. I'm going to take an extra step to be able to mechanize how this transition looks like and how you grant states an individual autonomy and responsibility to grow up and not be path or outcome dependent to the United States, which is something that I don't think Gov necessarily proved. What is the extension? Path to victory of closing opposition is very simple. There is essentially a shift of power from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. Before, the old world order was basically Uncle Sam and the US dollar, the hegemony. But now, we're starting to see a global shift to a new world order with an increased autonomy of developing nations and now an incentive structure for them to be less reliant on the US. TLDR, how the world now is able to future-proof themselves and sidestep the biggest singular point of failure, which is America being limp and no longer being able to pay, which I think is the case. 3 questions I'm going to answer. Number 1, why is the US kind cooked right now? What is the situation? Very simple. A lot of overspending and lack of fiscal austerity, which has led to inflation problems and domestic issues like the fucking fentanyl crisis we see in San Francisco, all the shit happening in the ICE and LA, and all of these fires and other concerns we're seeing in all other parts, especially in the borders. Heck, we even have Elon and Besant literally doing MMA and punching each other on fucking Capitol Hill. The US is kind of cooked. Now, why are they doing this USAID? Something no one talked about, right? Number 2, why did Trump and Elon particularly do USAID? It's because the debt repayment window is coming soon for all of the money that they printed and spent during the COVID pandemic. And in an advent of things like high interest rates and inflation, it's particularly important we have to be able to deal with those things. But before that, whoever POI'd, go for it.
Yeah, great US
Yeah,
context,
so-
but don't you think this kind of promotes isolationism, etc., and kind of isolates US further from the broader geopolitical mission or geopolitical unity which USA should promote?
Two
You're kind of
responses.
promoting
One,
isolationism.
Donald Trump is wanting to do that. He wants US protectionism. He doesn't really give a shit about everyone anymore in the same way that we care about the US because we need their money. Number two, they can't afford it, bro. If they're going bankrupt, they have literally trillions of dollars in debt. That's potentially going to be worse. Meaning, what has the cut of Doge with USAID done? It has literally cut $180 billion out of the 1 trillion goal of Elon Musk. You might say, oh, Joseph, fuck you, fuck Trump. It's not doing anything. That's 18% improvement as opposed to what? That 18% literally being spent elsewhere. It's a transitionary process which we think can get better. Third and most importantly, something that our opening missed. How exactly do all other countries around the world, particularly developing nations who we think are an important tipping point in the round because they're the most upset about USAID getting cut, how exactly are they more set up for success? This is particularly important. Number one, the mechanism is that they literally have a plurality of options now to be able to understand. Our other teams in the House gave you examples of that. We're simply saying they can choose and negotiate. B, they can literally hold their leaders more accountable when they exercise their democratic rights, being able to demonstrate on the street, be able to participate in public referenda, and in the worst case, being able to vote better. Because before, they can wash their hands clean and say, oh, who cares? My state can be shit because the US will pay for it. Now the US isn't there. You have to plead your governments and hold them accountable for those things. C, most importantly, an introspective sense of protectionism to be able to evaluate your local industries and say, can we continue exporting? Should we now import more? A lot of these things were glibly dismissed in the past because of the reliance they had to the United States. This flips the opening government case on China, and this fills in the missing analysis that opening gave you, which are kind of contingent on the UN and the IMF. Our case goes above and beyond that to give you an example that isn't path or outcome dependent on that. For all of these reasons, we think, contrary to popular belief, things can get worse, and we think things are actually getting better when USAID is dissolved. We are very proud to stand on side opposition.